when I was invited to do this, then I've thought quite literally about the title of the session, and this became apparent when I spoke with Clive the other day in preparation for this. So the intention behind this talk is to look at what is Agile, what do we mean by transformation, those two things put together, and then challenge the model for transformations. But what I've tried to do is to put this into the context of leadership, and especially digital leadership. Ultimately, what I really want to do is to get across the point that what we're talking about really is people. It's fundamentally about people. And what I don't want to do is to do a sort of a big teaching session about Agile, but I will take you back 20 years. Now, when we talk about Agile, really what we are referring to is what is there, which is the manifesto for Agile software development. That's what we're talking about when we're using that label these days. And I start there because we always ask this question to our prospective employees, to our prospective consultants. One of the questions that they're asked in their first video interview, in fact, is what is Agile? And I see and I listen to quite a range of answers to this. But what I want to do is to bring it back to that problem statement that these people came up with sort of 20 years ago. But there's always an observation, or probably two observations, that I will make when I refer people back to the Agile Manifesto website. It's definitely of its day. So in a digital forum, if you go to that web page, you will think that is definitely 2001 in its design. But it's also of its age, because if you look closely at the picture there, those are the contributors to the development of the Agile Manifesto. And I sort of say this apologetically, that it is a group of white middle-aged men gathering together. And what I'm hoping is that we have moved along some way, both in terms of our digital presence, but our inclusivity, our diversity, our equality, probably still a long way to go. But the problem statements that these people came together to solve was, why is there so much failed software delivery? It was specifically the millions and billions of dollars worldwide that were being wasted because of failed software delivery. And although they came together at this point in time to try to solve that, there were emerging frameworks that had been around for some time. So Scrum, for example, was certainly in sort of its early form in the mid-1990s, and can actually be traced back to the mid-1980s, in fact. So there were a number of frameworks that were coming together, and people wanted to frame it so that there was some common purpose around it. But if you look at the manifesto, there are a couple of things that you'll notice is that, first of all, individuals and interactions. This is about people working largely internally, collaborating to achieve a particular goal. So what they want to do is put the emphasis on people. And then the second thing is customer collaboration, collaborating externally with our customers. So they brought it down to this root cause of a lack of collaboration, a lack of working together. And certainly in my career, my sort of 30 or whatever years of working in the industry, I definitely suffered the pain of failed software delivery. And that's where I was searching really to find different answers. So Agility in Mind was born around about 10 years ago to try to take that mission forward to organizations to help them find a better way of working. But the reason it's Agility in Mind is that we want the outcome, which is business agility. We want to keep that in mind all times, not agile. And we start with mindset. We start with a way of thinking. So that is absolutely our mission. So talking about collaboration, sort of mentioned there that was the core of the manifesto. And there's just a couple of interesting pieces I wanted to share. The first one is a bit of research from the Kellogg Institute, And they did an analysis of research papers, I think over the last 30 years or so. They did this analysis, and the conclusion they came to was that where research papers had been published collaboratively, so more than one person working on it, it was something like 3 to 4 times more successful than solo efforts. So they came to this conclusion that a collaborative approach is a much more successful way of getting new ideas out there into whatever domain. We talk about market, but into whatever domain. So that's always an interesting read, but I came across it listening to this Radio 4 program. So Matthew Syed, and the program was about, to me, an unknown songwriter called Max Martin, a Swedish guy. I'm not sure if you ever heard of him. He's actually had something like 23 #1 hits, second only to Lennon and McCartney. And their hypothesis was that the reason that he was successful is that over his career, he's brought together artists from different sort of musical genres. And he's brought them together in a way that almost clashes those perceived wisdoms of songwriting. And so he's come up with innovative new songs. So it's definitely worth a listen. Those 2 links are like sort of short links, but I'm sure we can share them afterwards if there's not time to take them down. So collaboration is key. But what about transformation? Well, we know what transformation means in nature. But it is most definitely a term that has been used for quite some time, and it's quite easy to put a lot of nouns in front of transformation. And I will admit that on our own website, we go to market with agile transformation, business agility transformation, scaled agile transformation, digital transformation. And if you do a search, you'll come up with organizational transformation, business process management transformation, information data, digital, cultural, business agility, scaled and agile. There are plenty of things, and certainly in the last 20 or 30 years, across technology industry, there have been plenty of things that have gone to market. But what do we really mean by a transformation? And is it really what we want? That's sort of my challenge back to the forum, really. Is transformation really what we want? But what do we need from it? Well, I think the expectation of a transformation is that we achieve business outcomes. That's fair enough. But I think what business leaders tend to do, they tend to think about the tangibles around those outcomes. So the tangibles might mean we need to increase productivity, we need to increase our profitability, we need to increase our market share, and all those are good business outcomes. They're all well understood in terms of what we need to do. But just focusing on those does not transform an organization. It might be the benefits that we get. And my real sort of observation is that what we really need in an organization, and after all, an organization is really just a collective of people that come together with a purpose to go and do something. And it's really only characterized by behaviors. So transformation for me, surely, is a change in behavior. That's the real tangible, because if we do things differently, if we work together differently, people behave differently, then the resulting sort of outcomes for the organization, or the outputs from the organization, or the benefits to the organization will be different. But you can't divorce behavior from way of thinking. So the starting point has to be shifting mindset, shifting the way people think, first of all, because if they think differently, if we think differently, we will behave differently. And if we behave differently, we will achieve the outcomes. So I think it's that those are the steps. So if I think about a transformed organization, it's simple things like, what are the perceived constraints within the organization? Those rules that we've developed that say we can't do things in a particular way, or we have to do things in another way. What are those perceived constraints in the organization that we can get an individual to challenge, because they say, do I really need to do it like that? Or is it the outcome that I'm really trying to achieve? So if there's a new model, so that's the title, if there's a new model for agile transformation, well, what is the old model? And I would argue really that the old model of transformation, ironically, tends to be about process and structure. I think those are the tangible things that we like to put our confidence in. And many times when we start that discussion with client organizations about why is it that you want to be, or what is it about the organization that makes it agile, and they will be saying things like, well, what we want to do, we want to form squads. That's what we want to do. We want to form squads. We want to have standards. We want to do all these tangible things that they think are the evidence. So I think that's the old model. And I think the old model as well is big bang transformation. The irony of it is that you go back to the first principles, and delivering small and often is a much better way of going through delivering any sort of project or program. So I would start with, if we're talking about agile transformation, what are the characteristics of your organization? That's where I really want to start in talking to a client organization. I remember this with an investment management company. I won't name who they are, but probably infamous as we speak at the moment. And definitely a reputation for being a little bit contrary. But I remember receiving the call one day from the head of digital. And he said, right, we're going to be an agile organization. That's our mission. We're going to be an agile organization. Can you come and do some Kanban training? And my simple question back was, what does it mean to you to be an agile organization? And this is just on a fairly friendly phone call. He said, well, not sure really. Well, why don't I come along and we'll have a proper conversation with you and others in your leadership. So I met with him and the chief exec and chief exec's direct reports, and I said, well, what does it mean to you to be an agile organization? What are those characteristics? And I think there were 6 or 7 people in the room, and I got 6 or 7 completely different answers. So look, we need to start with you. So we've got that group of leaders for this organization in a room for the day, and it was probably the hardest day's work of my career to get them focused, and it was challenging, it was contrary, but we got them to a point where they came up with, these are the 5 characteristics for us as an organization. This is why we're doing it. And we said, right, great. Now you can talk to everybody else consistently, and we can talk to everybody across your organization consistently. Now let's talk about how we get people aligned with those characteristics. And a different one, again, I can't name them because of confidentiality, but a legal services firm, which we're just so pleased to be working with. They are going through quite significant change. With them, they are very clear about the characteristics. It is about common purpose. It is about collaboration. It is about empowerment. It's about connective leadership. It's about the leaders in the organization not thinking about their own goals and objectives, but thinking about the wider organization. How do we connect people up so that we can be more creative? And ultimately, it's about adaptability. How do we respond to what's happening in the market today? How do we preempt what's going to happen tomorrow? Not, oh dear, we need to do a digital transformation because we're 5 years behind the rest of our competition. It's about being adaptable. It's about being responsive at the time. So for leaders, it's about mindset and behavior change. So that's my message to leaders. It's about you shift your mindset, you change your behavior, and when your organization sees that you're doing that, they'll be a lot more comfortable about changing. So that's what it means to individuals and teams. It's about shifting mindset, changing behavior, and that's when we will see transformation taking place. So this is my very simple model. If we can get alignment, what does it mean to be transformed? What does it mean to be agile? Then have an impact, and let's show some intent, and let's show some impetus to start changing. Let's not hypothesize and theorize for too long. Let's show some impact. And if we can do that, we can start shifting mindset, we shift thinking quickly, building confidence in people. See, I don't think people put things into practice, new things into practice, unless they're really feeling confident about it. And that confidence is multifaceted. So, for example, what if I try this? I know I'm being told to try it. What if I try it and I fail? Am I just going to get a bollocking because of it? Or have we actually changed culturally within the organization? So if they're confident, if we're confident, we take action, and that's when we achieve our outcomes. The exciting thing for us in terms of how our business has moved on is that the focus is on people, and so many of our conversations and the sponsorship inside organizations today are led by the head of HR, the head of people, chief people officers. And it's exciting that they're really buying into this is about people and cultural change and sponsoring the investment. And it's less about sort of technology and digital and CIOs and all of those very practical things. This is absolutely sort of visionary around leading people to new ways of working. So the end point for me is where people are quite happy to say, I am not happy with status quo, and I'm going to look for a better way of working. So simply, I think we stop transforming and we start evolving.